Dub Nation. Dub Nation.
Big fat dub.
Whenever we can, wherever we can, we are talking hoops. And you know our guys will ramble.
Can you just email me the rest of this story?
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson.
Dickinson's an underrated talent, 100%.
On KNBR 104.5 and 6.8. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Steph on a relocate. Watson flew by and Curry. He's fouled as he hits the field goal. And do you think he lost this one? They've been dropping like flies all game. He's screaming at them too. He was calling for the foul, but somehow he still concentrates. Double team, just goes right under it, right in between, splits them.
Another spectacular performance from Stephen Curry, one of 3 on the week. Biggest 3 games of the year for the Warriors. True test of where they stand, not only literally in terms of the NBA Western Conference standings, taking out everybody directly in front of them and getting closer to potentially home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. It's on the table at this point, and maybe so much more. As we welcome you in here, it's Just Dubs, JD, John Dickinson, here on a Saturday morning on KNBR, the sports leader, 808 KNBR, as we're with you here for the next couple of hours and talking some Warriors basketball. Of course, the Giants and the Mariners coming up this evening here on KNBR. We got a lot of Giants coverage throughout the course of the afternoon and the day. And wow, thrilling day. We talked about it to begin Dubs OT last night, but what a day in San Francisco yesterday between the Giants home opener and the Warriors game against the Nuggets, and 2 just massive feeling games, 2 teams with a lot of momentum, 2 teams suddenly streaking and both getting huge wins last night for the Warriors. And yesterday, late afternoon, it practically turned into night almost for the Giants with the 4-hour game. But we're here to talk some Dubs as we do on Saturday mornings for the next couple of hours. The Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line open. And as always, we appreciate everybody as they start to file in on YouTube and Twitch. And also let everybody know that we're back for more Dubs OT for the remainder of the 5 games on the schedule for the Warriors in the regular season and beyond. Can't hardly believe it, but only 5 games to go in the NBA regular season for the Warriors, and they're going to come in 8 days. Beginning tomorrow, Rockets at Phoenix, San Antonio at Portland, and then the Clippers at Chase Center a week from tomorrow afternoon. So 5 games to go. They will alternate moving forward, home, away, home, and we'll see where the Warriors end up in the Western Conference standings. Last night, though, another, I think, statement victory for Golden State, considering the circumstances of the week. And you look at where this team was a week ago, and you look at the fact that the Warriors were suddenly trying to pull themselves out of difficulty by not having Steph Curry in the first couple of games of the road trip. Now, they got Steph back, and immediately they have taken off again here with the 5 consecutive wins. They beat the Pelicans, they beat the Spurs, and in the 3 games this week, Memphis, a team that somewhat has been in shambles, they've gone from 2 all the way down to 8 here in the Western Conference playoff race, and 5 to 8 basically in the last week as the Warriors have put themselves in position to potentially get 5 or 6, but now even 4 or 3. And the question I want to get into in the chat today, and I want to hear from people on the phone lines at 808 KNBR 415-808-5627, is, do you now believe that this Warriors team is a championship contender? Have the last 3 games changed that for you in terms of the ceiling for this team? Because I've been reluctant to believe that they were a legitimate, bona fide, like put them in the conversation of the 4 or 5 teams that you think can win a title. As great as they've been since the Jimmy Butler trade back in February, 2 months ago today, by the way, 2 months ago today, the Warriors make the Jimmy Butler trade with a bunch of guys going different places and Andrew Wiggins to Miami and Jimmy Butler coming in. And what a difference everything that he's brought to the table has made for this Warriors team. And if the last 3 games don't have you believing that this team can be a title contender, maybe the 20-2 when Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler play has you believe it. It's still going to come down to the young players. It's still going to come down to, can Steph and Jimmy and Draymond make it through 4 grueling rounds of postseason play at their advanced ages? But I think last night was another testament to the desire that this team has to prove that they've still got that level in the bag. And the back-to-back, the 2-week road trip, they wanted that one. And they wanted the one in LA, and they wanted the one against the Grizzlies. They basically said to themselves, let's go get 3 straight. And then they went out and they did it. 2 on the road in places where the Warriors have not played well, Memphis and Crypto.com Arena against the Lakers. They beat 2 teams the last 2 nights that they haven't beaten at all this season in their first matchups against those teams where it was at least close to full strength versus full strength. Of course, you remember the Warriors got beat by the Nuggets, one of the weird Jimmy and Steph losses back on March the 17th. And the other one with the Lakers, the Warriors had not beaten them, but it's 2 new look teams for those since Anthony Davis, obviously, in Dallas, and Luka, LeBron. What does that look like? All things on the table, I feel, right now for the Golden State Warriors when you look at where things stand. Andis Brown in the chat here. We got a great show for you. Greg Silver is going to join us at 10:50. Friend and occasional co-host of this show and one of the founding fathers of Dubs OT here on KNBR is going to come on at 10:50. So we're looking forward to chopping it up with Greg a little bit here as the Warriors reach new heights, I think. Maybe not quite yet in the standings, and we'll reset everything there. We'll look at the schedules that lie ahead for all of these teams. And there's just some big-time action. Andis Brown in the chat, Warriors can contend for a championship if they can play defense like they have been the past few weeks. And I think number 1 in defensive rating since the Jimmy Butler trade. I think number 2 in defense in terms of points, but that number 1 in defensive rating, that was going into the Lakers game. And I mean, the job that they did in the final 3 quarters against Denver, again, I know they didn't have Jamal Murray, but Jokic was doing his thing. And once they solidified their defense, I mean, it went from 44 the first quarter to 60 for the rest of the game for Denver. And they were getting picked apart last night. I mean, Jokic was just doing whatever he wanted. He was scoring. He was setting others up. I mean, it was the quintessential Jokic game. And the Warriors basically got to a point where they were forcing turnovers. Others were not getting their looks at a cleaner rate. And they basically said to the Nuggets, if you're going to win this game, Jokic is going to have to score 60 points. And that he can do it. He can do it, but I think that's a bet that you'll make. We've seen him do it within the last few days, but that's a bet you can make in terms of it giving you the best chance to win. And the Warriors were able to allow for that to play out in their favor. Big debate on this show and on Dubs OT over the last couple of months. If it's going to be the Lakers or the Nuggets for the Warriors in the first round, what's the more favorable matchup? Another question on the board is, has your opinion changed on that now that we've actually seen these teams play with Jimmy and Steph with LeBron and Luka. That I think is, I'm still not 100% sure my take on that. I was ready into the first quarter last night and really even through the first half last night after the Warriors came back and played a great second quarter to take the lead. I was at that point and everything Jokic was doing, and they didn't have Murray. We saw them shorthanded beat the Warriors, who were basically full strength in that game in March we were just talking about. I was ready to flip. I had said I think Lakers maybe a month or so ago would be the more favorable matchup for the Warriors between the two. I actually said Nuggets was the more favorable. Stan, make sure I make that clear. I don't want to be too into the recency bias, but the way the Warriors were able to defend the Lakers for good chunks of that game in LA, but the way they were really able to attack Luka, I think might make them the more attackable team. The Nuggets, as thin as they are, they still have, I think, 4 players that really have given the Warriors problems. Jokic gives everybody problems, but Gordon and Porter Jr. give the Warriors problems. Their size, they're Gordon on the interior, Gordon as a defender, Porter on the perimeter, even Porter as a defender, just based on the fact that he's so big as a wing, not always attentive defensively, somebody that can take some bad shots and fall asleep a little bit defensively, but he against the Warriors seemingly is always locked in. DVDV here in the chat before we take our first time out. I trust Day versus Jokic. I prefer that matchup as opposed to facing the Lakers, especially for a first round. The other part of it, and I think a lot of the Warriors' fear of facing the Lakers was the foul game, that the Warriors are not going to get the whistle that may be required for the ability to win these games against the Lakers. Well, that was wiped away a little bit on Thursday night because the Warriors were able to get to the free throw line. And a lot of the defense that the Lakers were attempting to play against Steph, physical as it was, they were calling fouls and the Lakers were in foul trouble. The Lakers were frustrated. So I think that, if you were overly concerned about it, and I still think Warrior fans would be, not to complain, but I think Warrior fans would be, and make it about that, more leery of that. I think some of that should be squashed if you were into that sort of thing. So I still don't 100% know where I fall. I think I am still switching my opinion. I think I'm going to be a flip-flopper on that one and say I think the Nuggets are the tougher of the two. But the reality is you're probably going to have to face one of those two in the first round. That's the way it looks at this point. Seemingly every other day, it's, they're facing the Lakers. Then next day you're facing the Nuggets. Next day you're facing the Lakers. Now you're facing the Nuggets by virtue of beating them. And we'll lay out everything in the standings here coming up and review the week and look ahead. But 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Greg Silver, 1050. And your phone calls, comments in the chat, Kyle's clicks, as we like to do here for those jumping in and joining the conversation there. Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. Are the Warriors now championship contenders in your mind? How far can they take this thing, and how much has the last 3 games changed your opinion on that with the wins against the Grizzlies and the Lakers and last night the Denver Nuggets? And by the way, they're playing Houston, who's second tomorrow at Chase Center. So they're just going right down the list of teams that have been directly in front of them. We'll get into all of that coming up. Quick timeout. Just Dubs here. We got Kyle Hart, Raf Corral, and we are off and rolling here on the Sports Leader.
This is KNBR, and this is Just Dubs with John Dickinson, streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Curry doubled in the corner. Podziemski setting up Looney. Great scrambling defense by Denver until Kuminga got to the rim.
Warriors win again. Jimmy Butler huge. What a game for Jonathan Kuminga on Thursday in LA. Maybe his best game of the season. Most impactful, to be sure, against a really good team in a the high-end role player level. And I thought, that was another just takeaway from the week. We're back here. It's Just Dubs. JD John Dickinson on KNBR. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. To join the conversation here as we're with you until noon on the Sports Leader. I think Thursday night may very well have been the final positive turning point for Jonathan Kuminga. And look, he didn't play great last night, had a couple of key buckets, but the way that he played against the Lakers, where I think he was defensively solid, he was aggressively rebounding, playing with energy, showed off his bag a little bit on a couple of plays. Like I thought it was, and helped the team win against an opponent where on paper you would think that his game should play in large part because of his body type, right? The Warriors don't have a lot of the 6'8" guys that are strong and can get to the bucket and throw their weight around a little bit. Typically, those are the types of teams that, they have guys like that give the Warriors problems. But the fact that Kuminga was able to be impactful, but I think it even speaks more to what Steph had to say after the game about Kuminga and the thing that we typically do, maybe not to the extent of making, grand statements about his entire career, but there is a portion of almost every show where it is like, all right, how did Kuminga do? Did it fit? Did it not fit? I think the quality play, and I think even the fact that maybe he didn't play as well last night as he did on Thursday, it ties to exactly what Steph had said about just let him play. He's got a role on this team. He's going to get a chance every night to see what he's got, just like Brandon Podziemski and Moses Moody and Guy Santos and Quentin Post and Buddy Hield. Like he's going to get his shot, and then you see how it goes. And at the end of the night, it doesn't have to be two extremes. It doesn't have to be played great, future star, although he may be. But we have tended to do the thing, and I admit I've been as guilty of it as anybody. We do the thing where he plays great, and it's almost a demand of, got to play 35 minutes every game if he's going to play like that. Well, he's not going to play like that every game, but that's okay. Doesn't maybe play as well in a game like last night. Doesn't necessarily mean you must trade him. He can't play in the playoffs at all. Not going to fit, whatever. It doesn't have to be both extremes. It can be he played a great game. He didn't play as great a game. Tomorrow he's going to play Houston. He might have a great game again. And he's played very well against Houston specifically over the course of this season. Maybe no team that he's owned more than the Houston Rockets, including a couple of games where Steph was out, where he really helped the Warriors win. But even beyond the play, and he flashed what he is capable of to help this team get to that next level. He's flashed that. And bigger than that, even, I think, is just the fact that we can put to bed because of what Steph said. And then Steve Kerr followed that up in his pregame press conference yesterday, echoing what Steph Curry said. I think it would allow him to just relax and settle and play, which I think is his best chance to be more consistent in these final 5 games, plus whatever his role winds up being in a playoff series. So that was another positive takeaway from the week, a week where the Warriors, since we last did this show, went 4-0 with the victories against San Antonio, and then 3 of the most impressive of the season, even in the Steph, Jimmy, Draymond era, where the Warriors are 20-2 with Steph and Jimmy Butler on the court. Memphis, Lakers, Denver. How spectacular has Steph Curry been? 41.7 points per game in the last 3. 52, 37, 36. Just shooting 50% from 3. Steph is 23 for 46 in the 3 games. So high volume, 12 of 24 of 11, 7 of 15 last night. And the degree of difficulty on the shots that he hit specifically last night, out of this world. Another thing floating through my head last night and on into the morning, like, should Steph be getting MVP consideration given the level that he's played at the beginning of the year too? Because he was, it really, the 12-3 start, and then since the Jimmy Butler trade, and I know there was some time there in between where he was, the burden the Warriors were putting on him was not exactly impacting his game positively, and that's been well chronicled. But as much as we can talk about the Jimmy Butler effect and what it's had on Steph, what it's had on Draymond, I mean, suddenly Draymond's the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year. He put on the Defensive Player of the Year highlight reel against the Lakers down the stretch there. I mean, just incredible play. But it got me to thinking, like Steph, and I think the narratives that surround MVP, of course, he's not going to get it. It's, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's time, or it's going to be Jokic again, or, that's just how MVPs roll. Best player, best team in the league, that kind of thing. And that's okay. But where should Steph fall in that conversation? And is this a year where all of a sudden he's top 3, top 5? Like, I don't know. I think he's been that good in the last 2 months, and he was that good in the first basically month and a half. And it speaks to winning. I mean, the Warriors have been spectacular. And I'm bringing up some NBA MVP odds right now because I'm curious. Jokic had a 61-point game this week, so that helps him. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the mix. I mean, if you go 61, 10, and 10, even in a loss, that probably helps your cause.
Well, NBA.com, they have Steph as number 5.
Okay. And what are I have a different article, but it's Shai, it's
Jokic, Giannis at 3, Tatum at 4, Curry at 5.
Yeah, I think Curry should be ahead of Giannis and Tatum. I do. I think he should definitely be ahead of Giannis. I think Tatum's had a phenomenal year. And again, the Celtics have had a phenomenal year. The Celtics have a much more experienced and deep team. I know Jaylen Brown's been in and out of the lineup more than maybe Jaylen Brown's been in and out of the lineup in his career at different points. But if this team wins 51 games or 50 games and ends up the 3 or the 4 seed, like, why wouldn't he be, if you look at how he did it and how the Warriors have done it? Now, some are probably saying, well, geez, JD, you got to give Jimmy Butler the MVP, right? I mean, you kid, but I mean, that Warriors weren't exactly winning a lot before he showed up. But I think you look at the level that Steph has played at, and it's been an under-discussed thing, maybe because this spurt has happened a little bit too late in the season. I think everybody had had written Steph off, and I think maybe NBA.com, I'm not sure when that was published, but maybe they are doing exactly what we're discussing. All right, they are throwing him in based on just how incredible he's been. And it's not only, the last three. He has had, you just look at some of the monster games that he's had since Jimmy Butler. 34, 38, 27, 25, 30, 56. He's got another 29, 28, 40. 28 against the Knicks in a game they win. 52, 37, 36. And it's 52, 37, 36. I think you could say against two teams that have been a nemesis to the Warriors with the 37 and 36 in the last two, Denver and the Lakers. And then you look at Memphis is another team that, especially in Memphis, has given the Warriors fits. But it's the biggest games on the schedule where Steph is coming up the largest, which I think is another case to be made for him. Games where they've sleptwalked through a lot of it. And then he gets hot and carries them through. But the biggest games that, a couple of the Knicks games, Denver, Lakers, he's been on Milwaukee on the road, 38 win. I don't know. I think that there's a case to be made, I think, for Steph to 100% be in the top five. And I think in that list, Erwin Kwong Alexander's going to get MVP. Yeah, SGA, since the league wants to highlight the younger talent, even when Jokic should win it, Curry definitely deserves consideration. Yeah, it's Shea. It may be Shea's time, right? Jokic has got 3, right, already. He doesn't need another one, right? And it's funny because this in some ways has been kind of a disappointing season for the Nuggets overall. Like, they're at that point where they've won a title already. He's won multiple MVPs already. They are going to win 50 most likely if they handle business here and their remaining games. I'm looking where they're already at 47. Yeah, 47 and 31. So they've actually only got 4 games left. So they'd have to go 3-1, I guess, to win 50. But for them, it's disappointing. Like, for them, where they are going to win 50, going to win 49. Like, that's disappointing for a team that thought they were going to be backing up their title from 2 years ago by at least getting to another finals and facing Boston. Didn't happen. And they're kind of in that mode where good isn't good enough and feels disappointing because it's not great and they've experienced great. So I think that also played. But the reality is, because the rest of the team hasn't been as good or healthy, Jokic has actually held them up even more to get to even maybe winning 49 or 50 games, because Murray has been out a lot. Porter and Gordon have been out at different times. And he truly is put that again. I understand why Shea wins it and Shea's deserving. Jokic has been legit. I think those are the top 2. But why can't Steph be 3 in that conversation? Tatum deserves the respect. But Giannis, miss me with that one. And I love Giannis, but that's just no. I think Steph's 3-4 in the MVP race, especially if you look at and I know a lot of the voters don't. You look at the entire picture in terms of where the standings end up. Is it truly a race for the entire season down to the end? But if the Warriors win 50 games, or nobody thought that was possible. And then you start to look at the numbers and everything, and I think it's a different conversation. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627 if you want to jump in on the phone lines. We'll get to more Kyle's Clicks coming up. We are going to get our schedule breakdown between now and 12. And Greg Silver's coming up at 10:50. It is KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Live from downtown.
Hurry, way downtown. Bang! Bang!
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson on the sports leader. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Honestly, I look at it in the reverse. I look at, me, Moses, JK, Quinn, all helping Jimmy and Steph. And I think by us being a threat, by us scoring, Peyton Watson was on me tonight. And usually when we play Denver, they put Porter Jr. on me. And so having to take another quality defender off Steph, it just helps our team in totality. And then, obviously I'm shooting the ball well. It's pretty obvious with that, but just try to help, our big dogs as much as we can.
All right, Brandon Podziemski. That dude is confident, man. He's I don't know. Brandon Podziemski's more likable than I think he gets credit for. He's got some swag to him, and he thinks he's really good. I think that's one way you can battle through the slump that he had at the beginning of the year. And again, I think nobody, and Steve Kerr said this last night, nobody has benefited more on the Warriors in terms of a jump in their overall play with Jimmy Butler coming on as Podziemski. He was starting to play better even before the trade. But my goodness, I mean, how do you not I don't know. I still feel like Warrior fans, there's a decent chunk of the fan base that the next time he goes 5 for 14, even though he's basically been at like Steph level of shooting the last couple of games, next time he goes 5 of 14, it's like he's playing too much. Get him out. He can't play 30 minutes. Got to play like no. He's actually your starting 2 guard, and he plays. He leads the second unit with Jimmy. The second unit that's basically the starters. That's kind of the misnomer. Start of the second, start of the fourth. It's the starters minus Steph that are in and trying to hold things down with Jimmy Butler. And that group, that starting group with Steph, obviously now 14-0 in games that they've played. Back here, just Dubs, JD, John Dickinson. I think Pods gets a little bit of a bad rap. I know we've had the discussion about the Kuminga comps. Like they're kind of similar in their mentalities. I feel like varying degrees of success. Both have been great at times and struggled at times. But it is, I don't know. It feels like people are all in, and nobody ever talks about Podziemski being a future star. So I think that is the one difference. Like he doesn't on paper maybe have that high end in terms of ceiling, but I don't know. He's been phenomenal. I mean, he's been incredible. It's him and Moses Moody, I think, are the two. Like those guys have gone from, what can you get off of from them off the bench to like now they're starting players on a 50-win team. Like it just that has title aspirations. And we'll have to play the clip at some point, but Steph, I mean, and that's the question I've been throwing out to the chat, throwing out on the phone lines here, and we've been getting into. Like, is this team now a contender? I mean, Steph said it last night, the fact that they are doing what championship teams do. And I think it really starts with the defense. It's the clamp down ability. That to me is what is become the foundation for all of it. It has not been offense, although you need the offense. You need Steph doing what he's doing. You need Jimmy getting to the line at least. You need Jimmy setting everybody else up. You need Pods and Moody making open shots, which is something they've done at a high level. And then others have kind of chipped in here or there. Some nights it's Kuminga. Some nights it's Buddy Hield. Some nights it's been Quentin Post. Like they've had, contributions from a lot of the other guys in terms of more the role player roles, but Podziemski and Moody have vaulted themselves into just quality starting NBA caliber players that are playing with 3 Hall of Fame players. Like that's, I don't know. I mean, Jimmy Hall of Famer? Jimmy Hall of Famer? Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. Yeah. Yeah, he is. So you're playing it just those to be able to fit and the confidence on full display, but to be able to fit with 3 awesome, 2 legends of the game and another great player in Jimmy Butler. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. And we've seen those guys struggle when it has been just Steph, or even when it was just Steph and Clay, to be able to fit in and find minutes. But Podziemski, wow. And Podziemski does other things. That's the part of Podziemski. Podziemski, 8 rebounds last night, 6 assists. He's 26, 8, and 6 with 2 steals. Like that's not just the 3-point shot steals the headlines, but Podziemski does other stuff. He defends. Him and Moody have been great defensively in the last 2 months. Like they have leveled up. And it just, we'll see. The playoffs tell the story as to maybe the what you like or the future roles and where you need to get better and who beats you if you get beat. How do you come up short? How do you go out? Do you break down? Did the young guys not make shots? Did you not get enough from Jimmy? Like all those things are questions to be answered. It's going to be a lot of fun to look at where this team ends up. And you look at where they are right now in terms of the standings. Close of business last night, Warriors win 118-104 against Denver. Still fifth. Here's where it gets crazy. So the Warriors have won 5 in a row. They're 46-31. They're still fifth. They are 1 game ahead of 8th. 1 game. At 46 of this. You've got Minnesota 6, Clippers 7, Memphis 8, all tied at 45-32. All 3 tied. 1 game back of the Warriors. So as much as you look in front of where the Warriors are and the wins against Denver and the Lakers in the last 2, above the Warriors, they're only a game behind the Lakers, who are 3 now, and a half game behind Denver in 4th. No tiebreaker for the Dubs against either of those teams, even though they beat them the last 2. So they are a game in front of 8th and a game out of 3rd as they sit in 5th. So literally 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all on the table. All on the table. Got to make up 2 games without the tiebreaker in the last 5 if you're the Warriors. But the one thing that's becoming increasingly clear, and I do think because of this team's advanced age, what they did last night was all the more impressive in one, going for it. And I commend them for doing so, because there was a lot of debate in media circles about whether they should give guys a night off, especially Steph and Jimmy Butler, who were both banged up coming into the game. Warriors said, no, we're not about that. Not about that life. Not about that. Let's go for it. And again, I think that was 100% the right call. You don't play as they did all out in Memphis in the against the Lakers to just punt the Denver game. Like that does not compute. Like that's just not the mentality that you want to have with 6 games to go. Now, I'm not saying there won't be a game. Maybe it's tomorrow. Although I look at how fresh the Warriors looked, I think a lot of that was maybe the adrenaline and treating it like it was still, they probably treated that game like it was still part of their road trip. I mean, you think about it, like it probably felt when they got home last night like the road trip was over. And so they get a rest and recovery day today. Like tomorrow, to me, if there was going to be a letdown game, tomorrow to me would be the letdown game. Not because they disrespect Houston, not because Houston isn't good. They've earned their second positioning in the Western Conference. But to me, if there's a sneaky letdown game the Warriors could lose among the last 5, it's tomorrow, because Houston is so good defensively and physical. And I could see the Warriors show up tomorrow and just not have it. Emotionally let down, physically suddenly looking tired, and just out of sync. So if there is a game to give somebody or a couple of guys a game off, I would actually do it tomorrow. And I said that Thursday night because you would get a little 3-day reset. You'd get today, you'd get tomorrow, you'd get Monday. Monday, you got to get on the plane and go to Phoenix. But I think that would be the game that sets you up for the remaining 4. Here's the reason you probably can't think like that, though. It's the fact that you're 1 game up on 8. And I also think there could be reason for a letdown against Houston because the Warriors are 3-1 against them and should be 4-0 against them. Remember the game they lost in the play-in tournament in Houston, blowing the lead in the final minute that would have sent them to Vegas for the play-in tournament semifinals. But they've won 3 out of 4. They've won a couple games against the Rockets already without Steph, which is part of the possible thinking of you give him the day. Do you give him the day? But do you risk that again? I didn't think they could risk it last night, and it's kind of the same thinking as before the Denver game after the Laker game. If you don't think you should risk it against Denver, why would you think you risk it against Houston? Like you just have to kind of keep going. And if there comes a point where your guys really truly are gassed and banged up, then maybe that's the game that you have to give somebody a night, but have it be in one of those final, 3 of the 4, whether it's the Phoenix game, the Spurs game, the Portland game, like that could be the potential to do it. But I think there is the prospect of an emotional letdown, as good as Houston is, because the Warriors have won against them and won against them shorthanded, and because of the fact that the Warriors, I think we've seen it. There's always that game where the Warriors just, after they've played a lot of games, and it had the potential to be last night. It looked like maybe it was going to be last night when they were getting cooked in the first quarter. It wasn't. But there's always that one game for the Warriors where they look dead. They look a little old. They look like they don't, earlier game tomorrow. So that's something to keep in mind again. But at this point, if you go for it last night, I think you go for it tomorrow. Like I'm just rolling the dice. You're just keep rolling the dice. You keep coming up a winner. You keep playing. Like it's just keep playing. Keep that momentum going. All right. We'll take another timeout. We'll get Greg Silver in here. The schedule breakdown is going to come up because it is so tight. We'll do that for you in the 11 o'clock hour. But Greg Silver is going to join me next. Just Dubs on a Saturday. KNBR 104.5 and 680 The Sports Leader.
Obviously, I'm shooting the ball well. It's pretty obvious with that, but
Dub Nation, this is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Just Dubs with John Dickinson now continues, streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Setting up Podziemski for three. Got it!
That's
In and out. Into Butler, back out.
That's the great thing about having Jimmy Butler. He's drawn too. Again, another back screen. They switch it, double team him. He's one to kick it out.
Yeah, drawing two and hitting the kick out. I mean, that's been, I think, the quintessential Jimmy Butler offensive experience for the Warriors. Jimmy getting the job done last night, setting others up. Players knocking down shots. The defense on point over the final three quarters. Warriors beat Denver 118-104. We're back here, just Dubs, on a Saturday morning here on The Sports Leader, and back, of course, tomorrow with Dubs OT after the Warriors and the Rockets. And great to be at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City again for the first time in 15 days last night. Also great to have Greg Silver join the program when he has the time, and we can make time for Greg always, and he does so now here on KNBR. Greg, good morning to you, my friend. Great to have you on as always. And wow, the Warriors are continuing to take this thing to new levels over the course of this week.
Yeah, what's happening? Thanks for having me. And what a crazy week in general. I mean, yesterday being out there at the opening day for the Giants, and we were kind of joking after the game. We're like, man, this is the first time where I've actually kind of understood the Ghost Runner, because that game went about 4 hours, and obviously what a great finish with Willie Adames, the new Giant, getting the walk-off. But the Warriors equally impressive through this week with the win in Memphis, and then what they did to just battle through LA. And we'll talk about the Denver game last night, obviously doing that on a back-to-back. But just my quick note on the Laker game is that when you're playing against a LeBron James-led team and you consider all the success he's had and the playoff experience and the battles that he's had with the Warriors in particular, that is just as much of a physical test as it is a mental test. And you know that Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler have a lot of mental toughness and everything, but to see Brandon Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody chipping in the ways that they have, last year we would say they were a little too old and a little too young. Well, no more two timelines. Like, this is the one timeline where you kind of need it from everybody, and they've gotten it from everybody that they need this week.
No, they truly have, and three impressive wins. I think, Memphis is obviously in a different place than Denver and the Lakers, but that's been a place where the Warriors have really struggled to win, and not only win, they've had some pretty brutally ugly losses in Memphis. So the Warriors get that one, and Steph goes off in that game. But I really want to focus more on the last two against the Lakers and Denver. What for you has been like, what surprised you about those matchups? Because, I mean, we're wondering, and I'm glad we got an opportunity to see the matchups, selfishly. I know Murray didn't play last night. That is a game changer for Denver, to be sure. But what stood out to you? Maybe start with the Denver game. We can work backwards to the Lakers, about just things you thought would play out a certain way that did, or maybe something new as we look at those individual matchups for the potential of future matchups and things that will play.
Yeah, well, for the Lakers to start, I mean, Anthony Davis not being on the team anymore is a big deal. And that trade is obviously seismic in the NBA this year, across the history of the NBA. It's going to alter the fate of both franchises for the next decade plus. But just having Luka Doncic out there instead of an Anthony Davis, for this Warriors team in particular, that is a much better matchup. And sure, they got helped by the fact that Luka did not shoot the ball very well, and Brandon Podziemski also went off, especially in that first half, and banked in a near half court at the halftime buzzer. You're not going to get that kind of offensive production every night from Brandon Podziemski, or if these teams end up meeting in a series, that's not going to be the norm over the case of 4 to 7 games. But it was the fact that they had somewhere to attack, and just kind of the general steadiness of the team that kept them in control. I think a lot of Warrior fans are probably borderline traumatized in the standard of sport over the last couple of years with some of the blown leads that they've had, and nothing feels safe in today's NBA, and especially before Jimmy Butler, it felt like a clutch game scenario was just a hold on for dear life kind of saga that was going to play out for the Warriors, whether they ended up barely holding on or blowing the lead altogether. And they really just held firm against the Lakers. And that is not an easy win to go and get. Austin Reeves, what he did in the fourth quarter, felt like he couldn't miss. And well, we've seen that plenty of times here in the Bay Area from our own side with Steph and Clay and Kevin Durant. And Austin Reeves was keeping them afloat. But again, it was just holding firm. And I think that I would all sort of distill it into this statement, JD, whether this was for last night or the Lakers game. Steve Kerr is going to want his players to play defense no matter what. And so if you're not going to play consistent defense, if you're not going to know how to play defense within a 5-man unit, it's going to be really hard for you to get playoff minutes or any minutes down the final stretch here. But to also get offensive production from those players he has now been able to trust defensively in Moses Moody and Brandon Podziemski, and especially what we've seen the last couple of games in Jonathan Kuminga, that's a game changer, and it makes you realize that, yes, they're still very Steph Curry dependent to score. They are very dependent on Draymond Green being able to not only be available and healthy, but essentially play the 5 for a lot of the clutch minutes. And, of course, Jimmy Butler adds another element with what he can do getting to the line. But you also need the infusion of these young players. And the fact that we've seen this over the last week doesn't make me think, oh, the Warriors are definitely going to go and win a couple of playoff series or they're going to make a run at a title. But it does open my eyes and would make me a little bit worried about playing them in a playoff series if I'm any team in the West. Not to say you can't win, but they're looking like a really tough out right now.
Well, I've said it. I mean, to me, if you didn't believe that they were title contenders before this week, I think it's fair to say that they are legitimate title contenders now. I mean, this team's going to win 50 games. I think it's looking that way. 4 of the last 5 to win 50. I think they will win 4 of the last 5, if not run the table. I think that's very much on the table for this team. We'll see how things shake out, but the playoffs come down to often who can you attack and how many playable options do you have, right? We discussed this. I mean, it's every team has 8 that they think they can play, 9, 10, and as playoff series wear on, it becomes, oh, wow, that guy actually can't play. And then you find yourself at the end of the series and one team's got maybe 4 or 5 guys they trust and another team's got like 3. Well, guess what? You still have to put 2 other guys out there, and those 2 guys get attacked, and that in large part winds up being the difference in a lot of these series. I do still think that's a question for the Warriors in a playoff series just because so much of their rotation has so little playoff experience. But the other part of it is, as it relates to the Lakers, specifically with Luka, I think you nailed it. It's the fact that as great as Luka is more attackable and exploitable than Anthony Davis is, especially for the Warriors in a head-to-head matchup. You would never make the statement attack Anthony Davis if you're the like you'd never even think of it given the way that he's played against the Warriors in his Laker era. But Luka, if he's not hitting shots from the outside and he's not getting to the free throw line a ton, which are 2 things he didn't do in the game the other night at the level that we've seen, if he's not doing that and you're attacking him and scoring on them, and the Warriors really, I mean, they abused him. I mean, hunting him and all of those things. If you can make a star a liability, look out. Like that is a cheat code in a playoff series.
Oh, 100%. And we've seen them do it with Luka before in the Western Conference Finals. And obviously you had Andrew Wiggins in that Western Conference Finals of 2022 to do what he did defensively and lock him down. And now you don't have Wiggins. You got Jimmy Butler, who's a very different kind of defender, and they're going to have to play like a different kind of team. But it is really fascinating to me that aside from Steph's greatness offensively and Draymond's greatness defensively, and by the way, just wrap up the Defensive Player of the Year campaign after what we saw him do in the final stretch of the Lakers game. That was just incredible stuff. And I think also a reminder, as as unfortunate as it was to see Steph, Clay, and Draymond not all finish their careers together, as much as Draymond had his problems off the field and had the multiple suspensions last year, you understand why they paid Draymond the big $100 million contract and were offering Klay Thompson lesser deals for lesser years because Draymond still has the capability of playing at a higher level. And Klay, unfortunately, with the two injuries, just wasn't at the same level that he was in his prime with the team. It's, it's sunk, and, we've all moved on from that situation. But, to have stars that you can attack right now is a good point that you're bringing up, JD, because with the Warriors and, Jimmy Butler being out there, it's a little bit of an interesting lineup. The Draymond, Steph, Jimmy, Podziemski, Moody, like it's not the most athletic or explosive, and they don't have a lot of size, but I would say that what you've seen is no one's really a strong liability either. And when you're also getting the offensive production that Brandon Podziemski's given you this week, well, that adds a different dimension to it all.
It certainly does. And, when you look at the Klay Thompson, Brandon Podziemski's a better player than Klay Thompson now. Like that's just, and that was kind of the case a lot. And I'm not saying that to shade Klay or anything he did to help 4 titles and all-time great, legend, Hall of Famer, statue guy, all those things. Like I know we've all said it. We don't need to continue to say it, but the reality is Brandon Podziemski's a better player. and if Klay did not want to accept that, I can understand it, but the Warriors made the right decision. Like I know it's people feel bad for Klay in the situation he's in. That's fine. That's human. I can respect that, but he chose to not be here, and I think the Warriors were right in setting the market and not giving a nostalgia deal to Klay Thompson for nostalgia's sake. It was, I think, an incredibly difficult thing for them to do, maybe made a little bit easier by the way things were in the locker room the last couple of years with Klay and his refusal to accept it. But the Warriors are in a better place because they don't have Klay Thompson. Because here's the thing, even if he was on the team in the Buddy Hield role, it got to a point where you almost couldn't, even though they asked, it got to a point where you almost couldn't, Greg. You couldn't not have him out there at the end of games. And then what would that mean? Oh, Pods is not, or Moody's not, or it would have wrecked some of the flexibility because they would have felt indebted to have him out there.
Yeah, well, there were a couple games last year where he wasn't out there for the closing stretch, and he was really upset about it on the bench. And again, this is not to shade Klay. I understand it. I can't imagine what it would be like to be playing at the peak of your powers and then have 2 of the most brutal injuries in back-to-back years keeping you out back-to-back seasons. And he was a great contributor in 2022 for that title as well, even if it wasn't the 2019 Klay Thompson that we saw prior to the injuries. But it's a good point. I think the rotation questions have gotten a lot easier for Steve Kerr and this coaching staff. And part of it was what ended up happening with Klay and allowing him to move on and go to Dallas. Another part of it was the Jimmy Butler trade and the 4-for-1 kind of situation, because now you've got essentially 10 you got to worry about playing, and it's not a question every night of where's Kyle Anderson, because he does certain things really well, even though other things he doesn't do quite as well. Or, why is Buddy Hield getting X amount of minutes? And I just think that I know that the talk of combinations and the right 5 can be something that is a very quick turnoff for fans, especially when the team was losing a lot of close games and you felt like a couple of different decisions or a couple of different plays would have changed the fate of it. But the reality is that is a big part of it. And Steve Kerr, I think, has had 33 different starting lineups this year. That number might even be higher at this point.
It's closer to 40. I think it's 38 or 39.
Okay, yeah. So that just goes to show, like, the last time I checked, which probably was like 2 days ago, it's jumped from 33 up to 38 because it seems like there's all that changing. But the point is, JD, he's got a group of 5 right now that has been consistent. He feels really good about. Oh, and by the way, when they all start together, has literally not lost a game.
That's it, 14-0. One other thing here, and we're talking with Greg Silver. It's just Dubs at JD here on the Sports Leader on a Saturday morning. Warriors getting the win over the Nuggets last night, a 4-0 week since we were last on in this slot. The games against San Antonio, Memphis, the Lakers, and Denver. 5 games to go. Crazy that is at this point. Who would give me your top 5 in the MVP right now?
Oh, man, that's tough, especially because I focus so heavily on the Warriors that I don't always do my justice in watching all 30 teams around the league, but I do try to watch a lot of Western Conference.
Yeah, well, go ahead, and I'll jump in. There's a reason I'm asking you the question, but I don't want to tell you the reason I'm asking you the question. So I didn't have 5 really. I had 2, and then the fact that I only had 2 led me down a certain path. But give me take it as far as you want. Give me 3, give me 4, give me if you can. You don't have to give me a lot of depth behind it, but you just who pops.
I mean, what Nikola Jokic continues to do, and arguably have a better season than any of his 3 MVP seasons. If he won the MVP, I would have 0 complaints about it. I also understand what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has done. I've seen certain metrics and stats about how he's the only other player besides unanimous MVP Steph to score and shoot at certain clips and everything. So, look, either one of those 2, I'm good with it. I got no problem. I think Giannis has had a terrific season, even though Milwaukee has been kind of looked at as a little bit of an underachieving team, just not being in that top 2 in the East. But he is one tremendous player. I wouldn't put him quite above those 2. And if I could jokingly say Jimmy Butler, because of how he's unlocked Steph Curry in the stretch, and we got April Steph going right now, he's certainly worthy of the conversation. But it's going to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Nikola Jokic. And there's just so much to debate about and argue in sports, like, if Stephen A. Smith deserves another word against LeBron James or, really important topics. So as far as who should win it, look, there's no incorrect answer for me. If you want my vote on the air for the sake of making a pick, give me Jokic. The first quarter last night was just a reminder of how he can just do whatever he wants, and he didn't even have Jamal Murray with him. But if Shai wins it and there's a little voter fatigue or it's his turn to break through, then congratulations to him.
Well, and for me, and I'll let you now in with where I was going with it, because it wasn't even necessarily about Shai versus Jokic. I think those are for sure the 2 obvious ones, and you laid out I thought really well exactly the debate between the 2. Giannis was an interesting one. Giannis did not first come to mind, but the reason I thought of it was Steph. And yes, you got the Jimmy Butler joke, but I think in totality, when you look at what Steph Curry has done since the Jimmy Butler trade, when you look at what he did in those first 15 games, yes, there's a gap. There's a 30-game gap where the team wasn't good and Steph had his moments, and those were basically the only games the Warriors were winning when Steph had those moments. When they got to that point where they insisted that they had to try to do something and eventually got Jimmy Butler two months ago today. Where should Steph fall? Because I think you could make a case Steph should be 3. I think he's been that good in the last 2 months, and I think he was that good in the first 6 weeks. And if this team ends up 3 or 4 and wins 50 games, like, why are we not? And again, this is not pandering. It's not a homer pick. It's why I didn't want to set you up to basically gloss, Steph, but like I would put Jason Tatum was another name that came up in the discussion. I think Tatum is deserving of 3 maybe after Shai and Jokic. I don't see why Steph would be any lower than fourth in the voting. When you look at just the level that, and yes, a lot of it is the Jimmy, and it's a real team now, and he has a co-star with them, and everything falls into place. But he's been out of this world, Greg, in the 2 months, and they might win 50. Like they could, by next Sunday when the season ends, be a top 5 to 7 team in the league for the whole year. Like, and I don't know. I think in a year where there's heavy debate at the top, I think there's a case for Steph to be third, and I think there's a case for Steph to be no lower than fourth.
There's a really strong case for Steph to be in that top 3 as a finalist when you just look at everything post Jimmy Butler. And again, to your point of the fact that it was a 30-game gap before this all happened, he's not going to be in that top 2. It's going to go to Jokic or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. What Steph Curry has done since Jimmy Butler has arrived, and when they're on the court together, they are 20-2. And a lot of the talk was, well, can they beat good teams? Because they did kind of have it nicely coincide with when they were sort of figuring a lot of things out in the early stages. They were playing against weaker opponents or opponents who, maybe had some injuries or whatever. But here's the other part of that, JD, and we've said this off the air to each other many times. Before the trade, the Warriors, it didn't matter who they were playing or if there was a heavy injury report on the opposition side, felt like they could have lost to any team any given night. And Steph sometimes did have those superstar moments where he had the flashes of why he is the player he is, and the Warriors would usually go ahead and win those games. But yeah, there's absolutely a case for him to be a finalist when this is all said and done. It's also fascinating to me because you bring up Tatum. Cleveland has won, 62 games now, and they have flown under the radar by that standard. We're not talking about Donovan Mitchell. We're not even talking about Evan Mobley as maybe a defensive player of the year just because of what Draymond's been doing. So, yeah, Kenny Atkinson and what he's done in Cleveland has been damn impressive. And it's funny to me that, we're not even bringing up Donovan Mitchell, their best player on a 62-win team, as someone in the MVP conversation.
It's a good point. I think Kenny Atkinson's going to be the guy who gets the credit there. Obviously, I think he's going to be the coach of the year. I think that to me feels like a no-brainer. I know Dagnall's in the mix. I know Ime Udoka is going to be in the mix, especially if they end up second. Mazzulla is somebody that gets brought up in those instances. But I think Kenny Atkinson. I mean, what changed with Cleveland? They changed the coach. I mean, really, it's kind of like when the Warriors moved from Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr. It was a lot of the same players with a fresh approach as to specifically how they want to operate offensively, and it led them to new heights. Now, I'm not saying Cleveland's going to win the title. I don't think Cleveland is going to win the title. I've watched them a lot more in the last month and a half since the All-Star break, not to get off on a tangent on that. I just don't think they're going to win the title. But I think Kenny Atkinson's he's the reason. Like, yes, the players get the credit, but they've changed the way they operate, and it's helped raise them to a different level. Final one for you, Greg Silver. I appreciate you, Greg, for hopping in here. 5 games to go. How does this thing shake out in your mind? Where do the Warriors end up? I think they've got a great shot, assuming they have the energy to play tomorrow. I think tomorrow's the one game, I was talking about this earlier, that has the potential to be a letdown, even though Houston's really good, just based on the emotion of Lakers, Denver. And I think at some point the Warriors, I thought it could have been last night. I think at some point the Warriors are going to have one game between now and the end here where they just hit a physical wall, like where they just do not have it. I think there's going to be one game where it's like, oh, like these guys just, it ain't their night. And all the games have caught up with them, and the age is catching up with them for a game. I kind of feel like it has the potential to be tomorrow. 4-1 feels like the safe but appropriate answer for the remaining 5 games. But just give me your thoughts on how you think this thing is going to go here in the final week.
I think 4-1 will be great for them because I'm with you that I don't expect them to necessarily sustain what we saw this week going into the final 5 games of the season because of not just the physical element, but like I mentioned, the mental challenge of playing a team like the Lakers or playing against Nikola Jokic. And Draymond Green had the hilarious quote in the postgame last night about, he's like, I'm sorry for all my low energy answers. I'm just exhausted. I feel like Klay Thompson at the podium, minus the paper airplane, of course. And so, yeah, Houston's got a chance to be a letdown spot. They have really struggled to play in Phoenix in the last 3 years, and they're going to head out there on Tuesday, San Antonio, then at Portland. And, the Clippers, that's going to be a big game because as great as this week has been, JD, the Warriors are a game out of 3. They're also a game ahead of 8th. So there is not a lot of breathing room whatsoever. If you want to talk about a letdown night, that could have some costly consequences as well. They do have the advantage now of they got tiebreakers on Minnesota and Memphis, who is both behind them. But the Clippers obviously lurking, and that's a team where if they end up with the same record, the Clippers will jump them. So, no matter what happens on that last
what does
day,
4-1 get you? All right, we agree on 4-1. What does 4-1 get you?
4-1 gets you a top 6 seed, probably top 5, I would say. 4-1 probably keeps you where you're at right now, which is 5, because I can't imagine that everyone else is going to be staying this hot for the end of the year. Does 3-2 bump you down to 7? If everything shakes against you, it's possible. I think they can afford 1 loss. I don't know if they can afford 2.
Now, I think well said, and I think you look at. I mean, if you go 4-1, just as it relates to the 3 seed and the 4 seed, if you go 4-1, you still have to pick up 2 games on the Lakers. So if you go 4-1 and the Lakers have 5 games left, that means the Lakers would have to go 2-3 for you to get to 3 or to pass the Lakers. Basically, they would have to go 2-3. If you go 4-1, you'd have to have Denver basically go 2-2 in their last 4. Denver only has 4 games to go to be able to pass them, and the Warriors would have to pass them to get ahead because they don't have the tiebreakers there. When you look at it, you have 5 games to go for the Timberwolves. I'm going to get into some of the schedule breakdown coming up here, so I'll save that. But yeah, I think 5 and 6 is definitely in play at 4-1. I think 3-2, you're probably 7 or 8, depending upon what happens. I do not think this team can lose 2 more games, and it's crazy to think that because it may very well come down to the Warriors and the Clippers, and that game meaning something. The Clippers have the advantage where they only have to be a game behind the Warriors as long as it's a 2-way. Tie for a spot. They can be a game behind because all you have to do if you win that game is tie, and then they obviously have the tiebreaker, the one team among the teams that are beneath the Warriors right now and in play that the Warriors don't have the tiebreaker against. So I think 2 losses, especially if one's to the Clippers, that probably is enough to dip them into the 7-8 slot. And that's a completely, maybe not the worst thing in the world because it would get you likely Houston, but that's only if you win that first play-in game, and then you have to play that first play-in game, which means you're playing, 1 day rest off of the Clipper game. Otherwise you're fighting for your life if you can't win that game. Against a Dallas or Sacramento or maybe Phoenix, although it's looking more like it's going to be Dallas and Sacramento in that final 9-10 matchup to get a shot at stealing somebody's spot. Greg, appreciate you, man. Great stuff. Lengthy chat here for Just Dubs, but I'm so grateful for you to join the program here as a founding father of Dubs OT and Just Dubs. We will continue the conversation next week. Obviously, listen to Greg and Greg 10 a.m. until 2 here on the Sports Leader. And this last week's going to be fun, man. Looking forward to it. And let's try to chat Tuesday after the Warriors and Suns.
Yeah, let's do it. Great to be with you. And I'm glad that we get to keep this thing going because if all goes well, the Warriors will have a playoff series. And so you're keeping me sharp here on a Saturday. This is good.
All right, Greg. Greg Silver joining us here on KNBR. We'll take a timeout and come back. We'll do a deeper dive into the remaining schedules, not only for the Warriors, but all of these teams they're in the mix with. That's straight ahead right here on the Sports Leader.
Just Dubs with John Dickinson keeps rolling. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Shot clock at 3. Butler's got nowhere to go. He's got to launch a 3. And he hit it! Jimmy Buckets! He has 17!
He's been huge tonight, too.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler, huge always, either by raw production or simple presence. Warriors win over the Nuggets. What a back-to-back for the Dubs. And again, just fun to learn more about those matchups. Fun to, and being in LA down at Crypto.com Arena, that game felt like the biggest game of the year. It in the lead up to it, I think it was the most watched TNT game of the entire season. We talked about that the other night on Dubs OT, the fact that I thought it might be, or the number one most watched game in the 7 p.m. Pacific slot. It most definitely was that. And I think even greater than that. And it felt, I mean, the buzz, LA sometimes gets a bad rap for being, and I know we hate LA in Northern California. I'm not trying to beat LA. I get it. But LA does, I think, get a little bit of a bad rap in terms of big game vibes. It's a different kind of big game vibe. It's a laid back big game vibe, but that felt like a massive game against the Lakers the other night. And for the Warriors to go in there, I think it shows that the Warriors appreciate that moment. They've always had that, Steph and Draymond, in the championship era, where they appreciate and rise to that moment, especially on the road. And I think we saw really all 3 of these last 3 games show that. And I think that plays extremely well for a postseason run. It's the statement that we mentioned at the top of the show, which is the Warriors saw games that they wanted and they coveted, and they went and took them. So I think that's a big takeaway from the way that this week is played out. We got more Kyle's Clicks coming up here. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627 as we're going to be with you until noon. Big thanks to Greg Silver for dropping by the show. Again, back as we are after each and every Warriors game here on the Leader. Warriors Rockets tomorrow. We're on right after from Harmonic and Thrive City for all of the home games, and we're going to be taking this show on the road a lot here in the postseason. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Where do the Warriors wind up remains to be seen. So let's get into it. We'll go here as far as the schedules, because I think it's interesting when you look at what lies ahead here. We laid out the Warriors schedule. Home against Houston. They will alternate home and away. Home against Houston, at Phoenix. Greg Silver with a solid point, and one that I had forgotten and then immediately remembered as he said it. The Warriors have not won at Phoenix since Christmas of 2021. That was the last time. So the end of the early part of the championship year, but Christmas in December of 2021, the last time they won in Phoenix. They've struggled in Phoenix since, and actually had some pretty low moments in Phoenix since. But we'll see where Kevin Durant is at that particular point. He's set to be reevaluated, I think, tomorrow or Monday. So I would say he's probably not going to be back. But and you look at Phoenix on a long trip. They got to play the Knicks tomorrow. They played Boston last night. They play the Knicks, and then the first game home for the Suns off the long trip is going to be the game against the Warriors. So Warriors go Houston, at Phoenix, back-to-back San Antonio, then a day off before playing Portland in Portland Friday, and then they close it out with the Clippers on Sunday. That's a week from tomorrow in the afternoon. That's one of those where all games are going to start. All the Western games are going to start at 12:30. All the Eastern games are going to start at 10 a.m. Pacific, and everybody's going to be playing at the same time, so nobody can cheat and get ahead and see who won first, and do you rest somebody later. And so that has the potential to be a fun day, especially with how wild things sit right now. And we talked about it. The Warriors are a game out of third, half game out of fourth, but only a game in front of 6, 7, and 8, with the three-way tie in play right now between Minnesota, the Clippers, and the Grizzlies. So let's take a look at what the Lakers have left. Warriors, a game back of third, The Lakers have 5 games to go. The Lakers have, Kyle, at OKC tomorrow, at OKC again. So the Lakers at OKC, they have one of the baseball series, Sunday, Tuesday, at OKC, at Dallas. Then they play Houston and at Portland to close it out. So I'm looking at the Lakers, Kyle. I want to get so 2 against OKC, at Dallas. That one's going to need to be a win for them. I think their best case is probably 4-1. They feel like a 3-2. That feels like a 3-2, and it might just be the next 2 against Oklahoma City. But if they can split that, they've got a shot to run the table. So some tough games coming up, but then I think some winnable games at the end for the Lakers, including again at Dallas, Houston, and Portland. So I think the Lakers are a 4-1, 3-2 finish as we look at it. Warriors a half, and again, no tiebreaker for the Warriors against the Lakers. Warriors are a half game on Denver, half game behind Denver. Again, no tiebreaker. Denver only has 4 games left at this point. So that's where the half game is. They've lost 3 in a row. Denver goes home after playing in the Bay last night. They play Indiana tomorrow. That no picnic. Indiana tomorrow at Sacramento, which is that's a game that they should get, and obviously they're going to need. So I would think that they win that game. Sacramento's really plummeted of late. Memphis, so there's a game between the group, and then they play at Houston, and Houston at that point probably has the 2 seed locked up. They're 3 games in front of the 3 seed. So I'm looking at, Denver feels like that feels like 3-1. That feels like 3-1, 2-2. So again, we said it, if the Warriors go 4-1, you'd need Denver to lose twice to be able to pass them. If the Warriors go 4-1, you'd need the Lakers to lose 3 times to be able to pass them. And again, so that's talking about, do you move up from 5 to 4 potentially? So I think Denver is, how many of those games is Jamal Murray going to play? I think that also factors into the equation there. So I think it really is, I would say the Warriors' ability to pass the Lakers and Denver, and looking at that, is, I'm going to call it 40-60. I'm going to call it 40-60 if the Warriors go 4-1. Now, if the Warriors run the table, they got action. If they run the table, they got action for 4, and they've got action potentially even for 3, depending upon how things play out for both of those teams. But I think it's going to take 5-0 to get to 3 or 4, to have a shot at 3 or 4. That's a declaration we'll make right now here on Just Dubs. Kyle, any qualms with any of that? Any qualms?
Yeah, I think
you're taking notes, man. Copious notes, Kyle. I love it.
I have a nice little graphic here on my phone of who teams are playing in. And,
good.
And how many games back. But I think, that Rockets game is screaming out. And I was telling you during one of the commercial breaks that you already know it's going to come down to that Clipper game, man. And that might be, we were talking about the Memphis game, and if you could win that game, you would lock up the 5 seed, but that Clipper game might be the most important game of the season to how the seeding shakes out for the Warriors.
Well, and we'll get to the Clippers in just a second. I think that's a great point. Warriors are a game up on the 3 that are tied for 6, 7, 8. The 3-way tiebreaker right now between those is Minnesota 6 right now, Clippers 7, Grizzlies 8. So if it's Minnesota, Clippers, Grizzlies in a 3-way tie, those 3 teams specifically, Minnesota has the advantage there. Clippers, Grizzlies. Minnesota here's Minnesota. At Philly, that should be a win for Minnesota. At Milwaukee, I think that's a 50-50 game. for Minnesota. At Memphis, that's a huge game for those two in the head-to-head as two teams that are currently tied. And I was looking the other day. I did a little chart myself in the lead up to the Laker game. I'm looking at the T-Wolves against the Grizzlies. Go figure. Memphis is 2-0 this year against Minnesota in head-to-head. So that provide, like, you're thinking, wow, right now it's, you would think advantage Minnesota over Memphis, and I think that's true, but the Grizzlies have had the Timberwolves number this year for whatever reason. So at Philly, at Milwaukee, at Memphis, and then Minnesota has 2 layups. Although, as we've talked about a lot, the Timberwolves are the one team that has a propensity to lose more than some of these other teams' games that you would project as layups. Their final 2 are Brooklyn and Utah. So at Philly, at Milwaukee, at Memphis, Brooklyn, Utah, to me, they've got 3 gimmies. So 3-2, I think, is their floor. Again, if the Warriors go 4-1, then the Warriors will remain a game up. The Warriors, again, they would basically, Minnesota's got to run the table to beat out the Warriors head to head if the Warriors are going to go 4-1, because they would have to make up 2 games. And even at that point, they would only make up 1 game, and the Warriors would end up ahead of Minnesota. So I think the Warriors are in really good shape. Warriors are in really good shape on Minnesota with that tiebreaker. 3 gimmies and 2 coin flip games for the Timberwolves. You mentioned the Clippers. Let's get to the Clippers next. Clippers currently 7th. Clippers beat Dallas last night. They have 5 games to go. Again, a game behind the Warriors with the tiebreaker. To your point on that game meaning a ton, the Clippers play Dallas again tonight. They played them last. They play them again down at Intuit Dome tonight. Then they play San Antonio. Gimme. Then they play Houston at Intuit Dome. So that's a big game. That's a pivot point kind of a game. Again, Houston's going to need a couple of wins to lock up, maybe 2 more wins in their final games to lock up the 2 seed. And the Clippers play at Sacramento the Friday night before they come and play the Warriors. So they're up in Northern California for that whole weekend against the Kings first next Friday, and then the Warriors a week from tomorrow on Sunday to close it out. So I look at the Clippers, and the Clippers are playing great. I look at the Clippers right now as they could run the table to the game against the Warriors. And if they run the table and the Warriors have 1 loss before the Clipper game, then those 2 teams are tied going into that game, which would mean the Warriors would have to win it. The Clippers could even lose 1 and be 1 back and be able to win that game. So you're right. That game next Sunday could mean everything. But I'm looking at the way the Clippers are playing and the schedule the Clippers have ahead of them. I think the Clippers have a great shot to go 4-0 in the lead up to the game against the Warriors, which only adds more to the conversation. You're right. The Clippers are the team. And the Clippers could, the other thing in play here is the Clippers could end up 5 or 6, and the Warriors could end up 5 or 6. Like, they both could wind up in, and it's Minnesota and Memphis that end up as the teams that fall to 7 and 8 in the play-in tournament together. Memphis, their schedule, they're the final team remaining. And again, I think among all this whole group, they're the team that's most in shambles at this point. Memphis has at Detroit, tough. At Charlotte, should be a gimme. Minnesota, the game we talked about. Denver, in Denver. And then they close with Dallas. So that's a game where, you would figure to win. They've got the most hard to predict, I think, schedule. At Detroit, I think that's a coin flip. They should beat Charlotte. Minnesota's a coin flip. I'd probably lean Minnesota. Denver's a game that you would think Denver would win that game in Denver, and then they finish with Dallas. I see 2 losses at least for Memphis. So I think the Warriors with the tiebreaker are clear of Memphis. I think the Warriors are in great shape against Minnesota and great shape against Memphis as long as they go 4-1. So I think the Clippers are the toss-up. But again, the Clippers, if they run the table, could get into the Warriors and Clippers could both be 5-6. So maybe there's a scenario, Kyle, the Warriors and Clippers both on the last day of the year know that they are in the top 6. That's an interesting, although maybe one team losing could drop them out of the top. So that I think will be in play. All told, here to kind of wrap up the conversation, we'll get your thoughts on it. We got to take a timeout before we'll come back here. I think the Warriors are gonna get in the top 6. That's the overarching takeaway. Unless I think 4-1 gets the Warriors in the top 6 for sure. 5-0 is what I think it's going to take to get to 3 or get to 4, have a shot at it. And I think you're right. The Clipper-Warrior game might be the most important game, definitely on the final day. I think that's the most important game. It might be the most important game of anybody in the whole group over the course of the remainder of the season. I think Clippers, Minnesota. I'm sorry, Clippers. Some of these. Minnesota. I'm sorry, I was looking at Minnesota. I was trying to. Minnesota, Memphis. I think is the other big game that among the group. But again, I think the Warriors are in good shape with Minnesota, Memphis. So, any final takeaways on that here, Greg?
You called me Greg, but it's okay. I'll let slide.
Kyle. Oh my God, Kyle.
No. So one thing that I do want to point out though is that the Rockets play the Warriors, Clippers, Lakers, Nuggets to close the season. And
so we haven't focused on Houston, but
the thing is, if they get a firm hold
1-4,
get a firm hold of second place, do they rest guys against the Lakers and Nuggets, right? I think that could also be in play as well. I don't know if
that's
they
a
would
great
do
question.
that or.
No, that's a great question. And I because Houston was above the fray, I didn't include them in this, but you're right. The Rockets play everybody in the group. The Rockets literally play everybody in the group. Warriors, Clippers, Lakers, Denver, as you said. What if they lost all 4? And that's the other thing that I think, like, if they lose all 4, they could dip to 3 potentially or 4, depending upon what the Lakers and Nuggets do. So I think that's the other takeaway. I think both of those things are in play. They win a couple, they lock it up. They don't win a couple, all of a sudden maybe they're in a spot where, they're 4-5 conversation, which could be part of the deal. So either way, great stuff as it relates to where the Warriors are, and it's going to be wild. It's going to be fun. All right, let's take a timeout. If you want to react to that in the chat, let's do that. We'll get a final installment here of Kyle's Clicks, and we'll set the table for the final week of the season. All coming up right here. Just Dubs with JD on the Sports Leader.
back with more Blue and Gold. Just Dubs with John Dickinson now continues on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Westbrook. Beautiful steal there. Draymond forced the turnover. Westbrook couldn't collect it after Draymond walked away with the ball.
Look at Draymond looking at his own bench. I love how he just makes sure people understand how great he just was or what just happened. Like, he's going to understand, I'm this good. I need to let people know what I'm doing. Unreal.
All right, Warriors, just the vibes are high. The vibes are real high in the Bay between the Giants and the Warriors. Both some winning streaks here now for both. Doing the math on this, both teams have won 5 in a row, right? Yeah, five in a row for both the Warriors and the Giants are 6-1, and they were 1-1, right? They won the first one, then lost the second one, and they've won 5 in a row. Final game in Cincy, the 3 against the Astros, and then the home opener. They're back at it tonight, and of course we'll have that for you right here on the Sports Leader. Just Dubs with JD John Dickinson on this Saturday morning. Final 5 minutes or so here. We'll do some Kyle's clicks, and again, just kind of setting up the week briefly. Houston tomorrow for the Dubs. We're at Harmonic. We're going to have our YouTube Tuesday show after the Warriors take on the Suns in the Valley. That's going to come to you right at the final horn. Greg Silver and Kyle Haar and myself will go for about an hour. Full disclosure for the regulars in the chat here, that's going to be a little bit of a shorter show on Tuesday because I'm going to be filling in for Murph on Tuesday and Wednesday. And so we've got the double days where we'll be on the morning show, and then we got Dubs OT at night. So that one's going to be, I know we've been going 90 to 2 hours pretty regularly, close to 2 hours some of these nights, hour and 45 on the Dubs OT shows. That one's probably going to be a harder 60 with the 4 a.m. wake-up call to be on the morning show the next morning. But then back at Harmonic for the Spurs game in Portland. TBD might be in Portland for that one, as we were on opening night for Dubs OT. And then the Warriors and the Clippers, the finale, will be at Harmonic. And we've got a big show planned for, like we did last year, that final regular season game, kind of a meet and greet. We'll set up a couple of mics and let people come by. So it's going to be a lot of fun there. All right, Kyle, let's get to Kyle's Clicks, Just Dubs edition. We'll go rapid fire. Jimbo calling my shot, dudes. Nobody beating us the rest of the way. It's on the table. On the table, they could run the table. They just have to avoid that one game where they're really flat. And I think, again, it could, tomorrow would be a candidate for that. But they've been able to grind out games against the Rockets. Alpha, Steph is the MVP and Dre is the DPOY. Let's call it now. I think Dre is going to be the DPOY. I think he finishes strong the last week. I think the DPOY campaign for Draymond Green has been immaculate. Like the let's get him in the conversation, and then the way that he's played since his name was kind of put in the conversation, I think is one. It's been a beautifully run campaign, and he would be deserving. Enrique Rivera, Pods is a gem in my book. Again, that's one of the themes of today's show. Like, I think Pods probably gets a little too much hate. Carrison, Aaron, I got us advancing to the second round. Anything past that will be a bonus. I think it's a fair way to look at it. Continuing on here, Florida Dubs fan, life is good. Warriors not afraid of anyone. And JD on Just Dubs Saturday morning. How can life get better than that? It can't. I mean, we're rolling. This is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Regulator, Lakers are the more favorable matchup. The lane is open now that AD is gone, plus Luka can be a target on defense. Yeah, I mean, how many times did the Warriors get Luka on Steph, and Steph just did what he wanted? And Steph just, drove, and you're right, there's nothing to be stopped in the lane. I mean, that was early on, after the Moody dunk got overturned in the first quarter. Right after that, it was Steph, Luka, mano a mano. Steph took him right to the cup, and that was the moment, and it wasn't the first time that happened. that was the moment where I was like, wow, this really is truly a different, this is a different matchup and favorable in the Warriors' way. DVDV, love myself some Dubs OT the next day too while doing chores and stuff. Everybody does. Dubs OT, just Dubs. I love the Friday night, man. Back to back Friday night, and then we roll with the quick turnaround into Saturday morning. It's a blast.
You put your kid to sleep to Dubs OT.
That's right.
You
do those chores.
Tell your wife you're listening to Dubs OT.
That's right. Wait, it's on Saturday? There isn't a game today. Again, that's how we roll. All right, that'll do it for us. For Kyle Haar, for Raf Corral, who's in there as well. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you tomorrow, and we got Giants baseball coming up later in the afternoon, so make sure you stay tuned for that. The Giants are hot, and we will talk to you from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City after the Warriors and Rockets tomorrow. So keep it locked right here. KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Obviously, I'm shooting the ball well. It's pretty obvious.